And welcome to the Events Reasons Academy. This is just going to be Otangelo and I shooting the breeze, and I'm still waiting for Otangelo to come backstage. So I'm going to monitor my emails, see if he has any last-minute messages for me. In the background is the Game 6 of the World Series. The Astros are leading the series 3-2. And a hometown favorite, Dusty Baker, is the manager of the Houston Astros. So I'll be happy for him if he wins. The Astros are on the brink of winning the World Series tonight. We'll see. Philly may give them a good fight, and we might go to Game 7. So greetings, everyone. Glory and honor to our Lord and Savior. While I wait for Otangelo, let me offer a prayer. Heavenly Father, there are many heavy things that are weighing down your people all around the world. I lift up the persecuted Christians out there, especially a young lady I heard about in Iran. From Iran, that's in Turkey. And she represents many Iranians who fled to Turkey and who are now Christians. And I just lift her up in particular. You know who she is, Lord. I don't have to mention her name. And I thank you for people in the side chat, people that have watched this channel, and then the other sister channel, Evidence and Reasons for the Christian Faith. Be with us. Help us in this election cycle here in the United States. You've told us to pray for all those in power, that we may be able to live a peaceful and quiet life in dignity and service of you, for that's pleasing to you. Let this stream be honoring and glorifying to you. In Jesus' precious name, amen. And hi, Otangelo. Just as we were praying, you came on board. I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
So let me introduce you. And Bread of Life is here. So Bread of Life and I were going to take on Aaron Ra and Dr. Chris in the October 5th debate. And we both decided that I should get a different partner. And Otangelo was one of the first people I appealed to, and he generously offered to help. I had a pool of people, and when Otangelo offered to help, that was very, very comforting, kind of calmed me down, because I didn't want to miss the chance to debate Aaron. And Aaron, that debate has 46,000 views. It's unbelievable. So I felt very indebted to Otangelo for his friendship and all the times he showed up on my channel to help me out. The last time he showed on my main channel, I had to cut him. I cut him off several times, and I felt really bad about that. I really didn't think anyone else was going to show up. That was part of the reason the format changed so quickly. So now I feel like I'd really like to make it up to Otangelo to try to advertise his work, give him a chance to talk about his book and anything else that's on his heart. Thank you, Otangelo, for joining us. God bless you. And Bread of Life says you need to turn up your mic.
Okay, let me check here.
And I'll also check my settings here.
Yeah, that's
my
maximum.
mic.
That's the best I can do.
All right, so I'm gonna cut down my volume. I'm gonna go to automatic adjustment. So my volume's going to be lower than that yours.
I can barely hear you now, so you have to put it up again.
Okay. Can't catch a break. All right, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
All right. So maybe I was just booming earlier. Anyway, what's on your heart, brother? And first off, if you wish to introduce yourself to our audience, feel free.
Yes, for who doesn't know me, my name is Otangelo. I'm Swiss Italian. I live in Brazil. I am a Christian for 37 years, and I constantly have conversations with unbelievers, with atheists, in regards of the Christian faith, in regards of teleological arguments, intelligent design, creationism, philosophy, theology. These are topics which interest me, and I spend a lot of time to educate myself and collect the information which I'm researching on my virtual library, reasonandscience.catsport.com. And I have two YouTube channels. One is the God Talk, and the other is Intelligent Design Academy. And I have no formal education in regards of biology and biochemistry, these sciences. So I'm basically an autodidact. I self-educate myself. And I think the key issue is how do we interpret the case adequately, the evidence that science has unraveled in the natural world. I think this is the key issue. So if someone says, well, but you don't have a formal education, then I say, yes, I don't. But I think today with the internet, we all have the opportunity to educate ourselves through reading science papers, science books. They are easily available, and all we have to do is just educate ourselves. So this isn't any impediment anymore. So I think any lay person can gain knowledge in regards of biology. So that argument by atheists, oh, but you don't have a degree, I think this is irrelevant today. And all depends of ourselves, to educate ourselves. And then the big question, which is a philosophical, not a scientific question, what do we do out of the evidence? Where does it lead to? So this is basically the dispute in which we are in.
Otangelo, let's see. Did you want a link to my channel? You said
Yes, can you put it in private chats, because
yes.
I haven't stored it, so I can see what comments
Sure.
comments by chat.
Oh, yes, 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 of course. The other thing is, if you comment in the chat, just like type a little, say hi or something, I can make you a moderator. You can dump links there. While you're talking, I'm going to be busily typing and putting your links in the video description so people can grab it. So that
Okay.
would be, so if you see me furiously typing, I'm trying to help you out, help your channel, get you some advertisement. So let me just cut the volume off in case it comes on. Just cut this. My system hung. Try again. Boy, the net is slow today. Okay, were you able to find the link to the channel and even to the show? And if you type in, I'll make you a mod and you can drop your links, your URLs, and I'll type it in the video description. So just some announcements. I've made this announcement before. I am going to be debating a evolutionary biologist. Oh, okay, there it is. Let's see. I don't know why this is so behind. My system's behind. Ah, there you are. Okay, I just added you as moderator. My side chat is like 2 minutes late, so I don't know what's going on. All right. So now you're a mod. Okay, so yeah, I'll be debating evolutionary biologist on November 10th, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And so do you want to talk about your book? And I can pull it up on Amazon for you while you're talking, and I'll put it on the screen, and then I'll put the link in the video description. And if I could fit it in the side chat, I'll do that too. So feel free to talk about your book.
Did you actually have a look? Did you have time to give even superficially a look? Or
like 3 minutes. That's about 3 minutes that I gave. And so that's about all I gave. So I'm going to have to rely on you to advertise your book. If it makes you feel any better, I haven't even read cover to cover Michael Behe's book. I have an unsigned copy. I have a signed copy of Signature in a Cell by Meyer. I haven't read that. So please don't feel bad.
No, I know you are very busy with your own.
Okay, I'm gonna make a really bad confession. I think I can get away with it now. I haven't even read Genetic Entropy cover to cover, my boss's book. But now that I'm no longer his employee, I guess he can't fire me. This, I am spread so thin, and so that's where I'm at. Can we? Janet Duttridge is here. Let's say a prayer for her. She's a widow, and she's disabled. I think we should lift her up. And this is kind of what makes my, lifts up, this channel when we pray for each other. That's very meaningful to me. If you'll allow me to pray for Janet here.
Sure.
Dear Lord, I lift up Janet Duttridge. She's dealing with so much, but widows and orphans are precious in your sight, and so are the disabled, and those who are oppressed, but who are believers in you. Lord, there are beautiful heavenly gates awaiting all those who have trusted in you and who believe in you. Please sustain Janet where she is. I thank you for this beloved sister, for her inspiration and courage that helped me make it through the day, and for her counsel and listening ear. And thank you, Lord, that she's helping another widow, and I lift up that widow as well. And we commit this stream to you. Thank you for Otangelo's book. In Jesus' name, amen. So someone asked, what book? What about my book? Oh, what about my book? Oh, you have to come on my channel to advertise it. Hint, hint. To be honest, I listened to 2 minutes of Rebecca's book, and it was so nice to hear her voice. So sorry, Rebecca. So guys, don't feel bad. The only book I've read more than once is the Bible. I've been through the Bible maybe at this point probably 15, 16 times, maybe 20. I don't know. I've lost count. So anyway, I'm calling up your book here, and I'm gonna put it on the screen, and you can share about it. All right, Origin of Life and the Virus World by Means of an Intelligent Designer, the Factory Maker, Paley's Watchmaker, Argument 2.0.
Yeah, so let me explain why I chose the title. The Factory Maker. During my investigations in molecular biology, it came to me to realize that cells are chemical factories. And this not just in an analogous manner, but in a literal way, because factory, that is coming from the Latin word fabricare, which literally means making or fabric. And that's what cells basically do. They make more of themselves. They self-replicate. And they use molecular machines to do so. And we can make several comparisons of a human-made factory with factories, with cell factories, with the living cell factories. And they have even more, I mean, maybe even a better description than just a cell factory would be an entire park or neighborhood of interconnected factories. Okay, so like the ribosome is a protein factory, RNA polymerase is a messenger RNA factory, the endoplasmic reticulum is a membrane factory, and biosynthesis pathways, they make amino acids, the basic building blocks of life, nucleotides, carbohydrates, they fix carbon, they fix nitrogen, and so forth. So it is an entire process of making things. So it is a very appropriate word to call them factories. And I think making analogies is something which is very helpful, because lay people, they are better understanding what we are talking about when we use analogies. So if someone talks about the factory, then anyone knows what we are talking about. So when we are talking about cells, we are talking about factories which make more of themselves, and they need three ingredients which have to be there. One is information, the second is energy, and the third is the building blocks. And I regard the cell as an irreducible, complex factory. So there is a threshold where you cannot go lower, and if you go lower, then you don't have life. And obviously that demands an explanation. How could cells have originated on a prebiotic earth without guidance? And this is the topic of my book. And a big question is, how how can science explain the origin of the basic building blocks if the metabolic pathways were not there, because cells, they make the basic building blocks which they use. And obviously on a prebiotic earth, these building blocks were not there. And when we are talking about these building blocks, then it's basically 4 categories. One is amino acids, the other is nucleotides, phospholipids, which make up the membrane, and carbohydrates, also carbon. So that is a big problem. And I am dedicating a good section, a good part in my book to demonstrate basically what scientists have to say. So it is much about not just my own ideas, but about demonstrating what actually those researchers which work in the field say in regards of the origin of these things. And once someone actually reads the science papers, then an entirely different picture comes up than the one which is popular, which people which do not read science papers think about. So people think that science is close actually to explain the origin of life, and nothing could be farther than the truth. The truth is that the more science is investigating, the more it unravels actually the hurdles and the unsurmountable, or the huge difficulty that it is and what it actually entails to have life. And there is a huge gap between the supposed prebiotic mechanisms, non-enzymatic mechanisms, which supposedly made the basic building blocks, and the metabolic pathways which make these building blocks. There is a huge gap. And there is no breach known which could close that gap. So this is an important section of my book. Then an important one is the quest of information. And I think Steve Meyer, with Signature in the Cell, has popularized that topic excellently. His book is very throughout and can be recommended to anyone interested in the topic to read it. But there are pioneers which already in the 80s and 90s, there is a German guy which I forgot the name. Already they wrote about this, about where does the information come from in life. And you need a minimal amount of information. And the question is, how do you get that without having an intelligent agent? And this has been easy for me to understand because my profession is machine designer. So I come from an engineering background. And for me, it is obvious that there has to be intelligence to create blueprints, to make instructional assembly blueprints which direct the making of machines and factories. Another analogy are architecture plans which direct the making of houses. And that's precisely what the function is of DNA. It stores information which directs the making and operation of all the parts required of the cell and how to operate it. And that is a big problem. And science doesn't have a plausible explanation how that information could have emerged prebiotically. And here we are just talking about the software aspect of life. The other is the origin of DNA and RNA, which is also a huge problem. RNA isn't encountered prebiotically, naturally. These are complex macromolecules which have to be synthesized in the cell. They are very specified and complex. They are made of 3 parts, the base, the ribose, which is the backbone, and phosphate. They have to be joined in the right fashion. The nucleobases, pyrimidines, and purines, these are also complex molecules which need to have the right isomeric structure in order to have the right bonding forces, the hydrogen forces, which join them in order to have the Watson-Crick DNA ladder. And if you don't have that right force, that right hydrogen bond, then you don't have the DNA ladder and you have no information-bearing molecule and you have no life. So these are big open questions, and I think they can well be explained when we posit an intelligent, powerful creator with foresight, which had the intent and the aim and the will to create life, but there is absolutely no plausible route by unguided natural mechanisms. So this is basically the scenario, and I think that many people, they are not aware of this problem. A big problem is the fact that there was no natural selection on the prebiotic Earth. Natural selection supposedly starts with evolution, and many, they want to insert evolution in explaining the origin of life, but you cannot explain evolution through evolution. Evolution starts with DNA replication when you have the first living cell. So basically you have either it was intelligence, it was physical necessity, or it was random chance, unguided random events. So these are the possible explanations. I don't think you can insert a physical necessity. That would be that the physical nature of the chemicals, they had some kind of constraint which would force the construction of the sequence of nucleotides which then are information bearing. But this can't be, because the sequence of nucleotides has to be free in order to have all sorts of sequences which then are information bearing. So you cannot use a physical necessity to explain the origin of life. So basically you have two competing hypotheses. One is unguided random events and the other is intelligence. And then the basic question is, what explains better the origin of machines, energy turbines, metabolic pathways, which are analogous to robotic production lines, chemical factories, transistors, computers, all this stuff. And we know by our own experience that we can and do routinely construct these things, and we have no example how things can self-assemble into machines and factories. And I hear it often that the watchmaker argument by Paley has been refuted by evolution. But the thing, and the same goes to Hoyle's 747 tornado analogy. The thing is that Hoyle in special didn't apply that analogy to evolution, but to the origin of life. And also the watchmaker argument, despite many saying, well, it has been refuted by evolution, I would say absolutely not. It has not been refuted. It is a simple fact that watches do not self-assemble. Then you can say, well, but watches do not self-replicate. But the truth is that self-replication is extraordinarily complicated, and we are not capable to construct self-replicating factories. And the simplest DNA replication machinery is by viruses and then by prokaryotes, and they require at least about 30 irreducible proteins, where you need all of these 30 proteins or you cannot have DNA replication. And just a good example is helicase. If you remove just helicase from DNA replication, then you cannot replicate DNA. So in reality, the fact that cells are self-replicating adds complexity and adds difficulty to explain the origin of these things naturally. Maybe you have something to add, Sal.
No, I was just listening, trying to catch a few things. Who should read the book? Who would you recommend read the book?
Yeah, well, I have had some feedback by people which do not have much background in biochemistry, and they have commented that it is a book which can be well understood. So it was my concern not to use too many technical terms. And you know that science papers, they are full of technical terms which a layperson which is not familiar with biochemistry doesn't understand. So I have tried to keep it not too technical, in order that anyone that is interested in the topic can read the book and can, maybe not everything, but can understand a good part of it. And I think it helps that I basically do not use much calculations and things which then are too technical which either I do not understand. So it is not. It is a book which goes really into the details in order to demonstrate in a clear manner why a natural origin of life is not possible. I use a lot of quotes because I want that the experts come to be heard what they have to say, and then I give my comments. And since I am not obligated to just give naturalistic explanations, which is the problem in science papers, which cannot resort to a designer, I am free to say this evidence seems to me better explained by design rather than not design.
Can we look through some of the chapters? I mean, that's anything publicly available here. So I'm not. I'm showing what Amazon is making available.
Well, I can open it and then I can put it on the screen here.
I can just read some of this for you. This is the Amazon stuff.
Yeah, that's up to you, whatever you
sure,
like.
Let's try this. This book is about one of the deepest unsolved mysteries, the immensely difficult puzzle of the origin of life. Watson and Crick discovered the DNA molecule in the early 50s, and Miller-Urey performed their chemical experiments in 1953, which started the modern era of investigation of the origin of life. Huge sums of money were spent, and incalculable man-hours were invested to solve the mystery of life's origin. But it did not bring clear answers to the trajectory from non-life to life by unguided natural means. Investigators have come up with numerous hypotheses, but are even in the dark about having an idea about the trajectory or a clear model. In popular media, the impression is being nourished that solving the problem of the origin of life is just a matter of time. Science is working on it, so they say. Truth is, there is widespread ignorance and lack of knowledge in regards to the size of the problem, not acknowledged beyond the narrow circle of specialists. Otangelo Grasso's work is the result of many years of investigations into biochemistry and the origin of life. We can now advance Paley's watchmaker argument, the factory maker argument. And I'll skip a little bit and we'll just look at some of your if you don't mind, can I read this? Because I'd like to know more about you. Otangelo Grasso is a Swiss Italian born in 1966 and raised near Zurich, Switzerland. After elementary school, he was the apprentice as machine designer and concluded his studies successfully in 1986, working for several years in his profession. Later in the 1990s, he moved to Brazil. And in the mid-2000s, Aracaju, northeast of Brazil.
Yeah.
Are you near Rio de Janeiro?
I lived 8 years, but I'm further north now. I'm 300 kilometers up from Salvador de Bahia.
Northeast of Brazil, where he currently lives and works as real estate developer. He speaks fluently German, Italian, Portuguese, English, and has limited knowledge in Spanish and French. Bravo. Well done. He is married with Leila and has one daughter, Larissa, 9 years of age. He is an evangelical Christian since 1984, apologist, young earth creationist, and proponent of intelligent design. I actually didn't know you were a young earth creationist for sure. I mean, I figured, but this is the first time I actually saw it. He has written articles for the Discovery Institute, see here and here, I didn't know that, and for Uncommon Descent, a website serving the intelligent design community, see, for example, here and here. He is engaged in many debates with atheists over the years. He runs a virtual library defending the Christian worldview, creationism, and intelligent design. And actually, where he publishes information related to intelligent design, the Christian worldview, and various topics related to origins. An overview of his activities and past debates can be accessed here. So, you know, I'm going to try to track down those links. I'll put it in the video description for our viewers so they can see it. So if you have some comment while I try to just hurriedly try to get this going, please feel free to do a little filler for me.
Yeah, maybe you have a question so I can answer, because otherwise I don't um, really know what I should address now.
Well, it just so happens I can't hyperlink from the Amazon site. I'm sure probably in a virtual, in a Kindle. Do you have your book available in Kindle as well?
Yes, it is in Kindle and paperback.
Okay. So, all right, let me think of questions. So we'll just go here, and if the audience has any, please. So we have introduction, chapter 1, and then chapter 2, these are all the things. And I'm just looking through here. Nitrogen levels in the... How many pages is your book? 500?
On Kindle it's 650, but in A4 it's 330 pages.
This is this is a magnum opus.
Yeah.
This is very comprehensive.
Yeah. Well, the truth is actually that I wasn't pretending to stop and publish the book now, because I have not even, this is kind of like as an entry dish in regards of abiogenesis. I've not even touched in the main topics which are related to abiogenesis. So when I saw that it was starting to get too big, I said, well, let me just publish it as a volume 1, and then I move on. Otherwise, it would have taken a lot of time, and it would have been very big. So that's why I said, let me stop here.
Yeah, I'm just looking through the list of things. All of this is very interesting. If I may relate an anecdote, and I don't know. Oh, good evening, Mark O'Connell. Greetings. If I may relate a story as you're describing this, and there's a gentleman named Matt Bilyeu who was on Rebecca Davis's channel, and he was raised in a Christian home. By high school, his senior year, he'd lost his faith, and he went to study biology at a secular school. His professors were evolutionists. Like one of the first days in class, the professor said, well, it's okay if you're a Christian, but here we're going to teach science. And they're teaching evolution. I mean, that was just kind of a nasty swipe at Christians, first day of class. So we're here to teach you the truth. And so he was already an atheist at that point, but he just thought that sounded pretty, kind of, indoctrinating and whatever. But by his 4th year in school, he was studying the cell membrane, and he concluded this is too complex to happen naturally. Everything the professors told him was false about origin of life and evolution. He then concluded there had to be a creator. 6 months later, he rededicated his life to Jesus Christ, got married, went to seminary, got married, and now he's a defender of the Christian faith. So one thing that, as I was reading through your book, that I wish Christians would just study more is cells. I was reading a peer-reviewed paper by Michael Lynch, Proceedings National Academy of Science. And he said, we're just beginning to have an evolutionary theory for cells. And I was laughing. I said, he was saying it's nascent, meaning it's in its infancy. And I said, no, I think it's dead on arrival. But the thing is they prefer to talk about the fossil record. They talk about human ancestry. But the reason I talked about natural view is the cell. When you
I cannot hear you.
Oh, am I fading out?
No, it's better again.
Boy, this is a really directional mic. I don't know how to adjust it so it's
but now it's okay.
So Matt Bilyeu, the reason I gave that anecdote was Matt Bilyeu. It was a study of cells. And I've honestly not heard any Christian, I've only heard of one case of a Christian. Oh, thank you, Rebecca. So I'm going to maybe just have to put this a little more forward. Let me try this. How's that?
It's okay. I can hear you well.
Okay.
Just was a moment that you went off, but it's okay.
So I only heard about one person who ever became persuaded of a creator when they heard about a debate about chimp-human ancestry. Only one. I've known of many more that began to believe in a God when they studied the cell. So I'm very, very glad you've covered this. In the creationist world right now, there is a lot of focus on baraminology. The last conference I was at, tons of baraminology. And, that's fine if you're already a creationist. But I really don't know a single person that was a non-believer in God who became a believer in God because they heard baraminology stuff. It has been origin of life and then the architecture of the cell. Change Tan, when she taught molecular and cell biology, and she saw the differences in eukaryotes and prokaryotes, she became a creationist. And then she studied the origin.
I am right now. I was first thinking about to just continue where I stopped in the Origin of Life book, because there are really so many topics to cover. And I said, well, I want to start a little bit something else. And I've started now to write about evolution. And right at the beginning, I quote you here E.B. Wilson. He is one of the cell biology pioneers. And I quote him, he says, "The key to every biological problem must finally be sought in the cell. For every living organism is, or at some time, has been a cell." And I fully agree with that. There is another quote: "To understand novelty in evolution, we need to understand organisms down to their individual building blocks, down to the workings of their deepest components, for these are what undergo change." And I fully agree on that. And also my book in regards of evolution, even if we go to multicellularity and the construction of complex form, the mechanisms, they are on a molecular and cellular, intracellular level. So this is what has to be elucidated. And I have much of that information already together, but I just recently started to have it in book form. And now it's my task just to reformulate the information so that it can be launched as a book. Now, just to give you an example, so when we are talking about the construction of complex organisms, and I have here a link, and anyone can look it up. I'll put it here in the side chat. It is.
Oh, it's in the private chat. You can put it in the chat.
Oh yes, I'll put it in the side chat. If not given, oh yes, I have a range. Okay.
Here, someone just said, someone just bought your book, Ray Giordano. Do you know Ray? Nice to see you, Ray. God bless you. So there you go, Otangelo. I got you a sale. And congratulations
cool,
on the book.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Ray. Thank you very much for supporting us, supporting our channel. You've been so incredibly generous, brother, and I should take time to pray for you more. Actually, oh, there, Bread of Life bought it. You got 2 sales tonight, Otangelo.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. Yeah, so how do biological multicellular complexity and spatially organized body plans emerge? So just here, I specify in regards of explaining organismal form, that depends on explaining how organs, tissues, and cells form and gain shape. On the lowest level of the hierarchy, the formation of cells in a multicellular organism depends on the specification of 18 different things. I'll not quote them here because it will be taking too much time. But I mean, if we just think about human cells, we have 37 trillion cells. And each cell, the human cell maybe is the most complex cell in the entire animal world. And we host 2.3 billion proteins. Okay, 2.3 billion proteins each cell, and we have 37 trillion cells. And each cell has to be specified in regards of at least these 18 points, which I am listing in the link in the website that I put in the side chat. So, for example, we have 200 different cell types, and they are huge. There are huge differences. Like, for example, a neuron nerve cell can have 10,000 dendrites or even more, and it is a huge difference also in form compared to a blood cell. How does that differentiation happen? And these are very, very complex mechanisms, and also the cell shape and form, these are huge variations. And when you go to study that, then you see that it is mostly, and this is like a scheme going all through biology where information directs molecular machines how they have to perform and do their job. And there are literally proteins inside of the nucleolus where the chromosomes are hosted, which with forces they push and pull them and put them in the right position so they can be expressed when necessary. And even the 3D configuration of the chromosomes confers information. So this is analog information of DNA. Besides the digital information of the sequence, also the structure of the DNA, how it bends, how it folds, conveys information. And this is just staggering, and it is fascinating. And as I said, I think the mere fact that we have on various levels always information directing the operations, making of things, is powerful evidence of design. And that's why I call it Paley's 2.0, because it goes through all biology like a red line. It is always information directing the actions, in biology and in biochemistry.
If can we pause here? I haven't seen Ray in a long time. He's a dear friend. Can we just pause to say a quick prayer for him?
Sure.
Dear Lord, thank you for Ray Giordano. I'm just so glad to hear him here tonight. Just be with his needs, and we lift him up, this dear brother, to you, this former chemist, and we're so privileged that he came here today. I offer a prayer for him and his loved ones in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
This is the nice thing about having a smallish channel. I can do things like that, interrupt the flow a little bit because I feel like we're among friends. This is a lot more meaningful to me personally than, having these big open mics and all these shouting matches. I'm going to have enough drama possibly coming on. I don't know if you probably overheard. I have a small television deal, and I'll be lecturing at a new creationist museum in Dixon, Tennessee. I'll have exhibits there. Need to finish some books with Dr. Sanford. I have like 5 papers I'm working on simultaneously, and the workload's really killing me. I have stuff to do here at home, and there's some things going on in my church. People can probably guess what's going on there. So I really don't need any internet drama. I kind of like these small channels where I can just kind of extend my thoughts, read technical papers, have more technical discussions like this. I really felt some of the open mics. You'll start talking, and then Leo will be there to interrupt you, and I just roll my eyes. It's just like, I'm so glad you're here, because I really felt bad that you had pearls of things that people could learn from, and it was not being appreciated. And so I'm glad to be able to give you a little bit of an outlet here on my channel. And I'm kind of happy with the smallish channel. It's the quality also that counts for a lot. I mean, yeah, Aaron Ra, my debate with him had probably now 47,000 views, and it's like, okay, I felt what I did here on the channel the last few weeks with working through special relativity from electromagnetic theory, that was very, very meaningful, and then reading peer-reviewed papers. So just wanted to say thanks. And anyway, you're talking about the complexity of the cell and the cell types. See, that's the thing that gets me about when we talk about evolutionary theory, and even how what really gets me is, I'm not familiar with Mama Gemini. Gemini? I don't know who Mama Gemini is. Anyway, I'm sorry, Mark. I don't understand who that is. Anyway, oh, okay, typo. So even the creationists have focused so much on the morphological stuff, and then they're arguing over the bones of all the the various things in human evolution. And I'm like, the cell is where people's hearts have been changed. I'll tell you, I really saw it when James Tour was taking on Dave Farina, which is still so funny. There are people in the side chat praising God. James Tour would be describing the chemical reactions, and people in the side chat were just saying, "Praise God Almighty." I don't see that in any other discussions on creation evolution, like I did with James Tour talking about prebiotic chemistry. It really, I don't know. That's just my feeling, and I have mixed feelings about this baraminology interest, because basically you and I don't have a lot of competition, because people are eager to talk about human chimp ancestry. I was at a talk with Dr. Sanford that he spoke on October 17th, and everyone was asking about chimp human ancestry. It's like, I felt kind of sad. I just like, doesn't anyone have any interest in molecules? It's like you're getting stuff handed to you on a silver platter here. If you just knew it, if you knew to look there, the gold is where other people are not willing to look. They kind of want,
But
Yeah,
Sal, what the problem is in general with atheists is their epistemological framework, which often is very faulty. Very recently, I was in Clubhouse, and there was an atheist, and he said that he was convinced that evolution is true because of um, the there is a site which is with the transposons, which is the same site on chimps and humans. And they claim that it couldn't be otherwise explained than by common ancestry. And then he also mentioned a prehistoric fish and said that proves evolution. And I was thinking, wow, I mean, just because of these two things, he believes that evolution is true. I mean, evolution is a huge field, and nobody of us can absorb all the information that is available in regards of it. But very recently, there are science papers out which explain the difference of the morphological forms, the differences between chimps or apes and humans. I mean, even let's suppose that our similarity, the genotype, let's suppose it has 80% similarity, but phenotype, it's a big difference. And the question is, where does it come from? And these recent science papers, they are elucidating that we are differently wired. So the transcription, the gene regulatory networks and the transcription factors, which are specific to humans, there are about 35,000 differences between chimps and humans. This is a huge, huge difference. How do you wire that, or how do you get that difference through evolution? And there are other things which are simply overlooked and not appreciated. If let's suppose you say that the split occurred 6 million years ago. So you start with the brain, which has maybe a third of a size and weight of a human brain. So a chimp has about 33 billion neurons, and the human brain has about 100 billion neurons. So you need to increase 66 billion neurons in 6 million years. So if you consider that each cell has to be specified where it belongs and what type of neuron it gets and so forth, then 6 million years to get that change is a very short period of time. And this is, in my view, also a big problem for evolution. So I think things have to be looked more in a holistic and integrated fashion than rather just looking one line of evidence and say because there is a common, there is chromosome 2 or things like that, therefore there is common ancestry. I think this is very problematic. What are your views on this, Sal?
I obviously have different emphasis and views. I've said that if you prove the Earth is young, it's a done deal. Even Dapper Dino said, Sal, if you show that the Earth is young, there's no common ancestry. And showing the Earth is young solves a lot of problems. I don't try to go through the genetic or fossil record arguments to say we don't have, and I'll tell you why. Are you familiar with the book Evolution, a Theory in Crisis by Michael Denton?
Yes.
Okay, so that was considered one of two founding books of the modern ID movement. So the older ID movement was William Paley, etc. The modern ID movement started in 1984, Bradley Thaxton Olson's Mystery of Life's Origin, and the 1985's Evolution, a Theory in Crisis. So that was the book that influenced Phil Johnson and Michael Behe and lots of others. And then other people were influenced by Bradley Thaxton, Olson, and really also Kenyon wrote a foreword there too, and so did I think it was Robert Shapiro the chemist, not the lawyer, Robert Shapiro.
Mm-hmm.
Why did I mention that? Michael Denton was an old Earth creationist in high school. He argued with the teachers. He went off to medical school. Part of his training involved dissecting primates. And he was comparing the anatomy of humans to primates. He became an atheist as a result. So we can make that argument like what you just made, but for some people, the similarity argument is so powerful that even someone like Michael Denton, who eventually wrote the book Evolution, the Theory, and Crisis, he kind of came half circle, didn't come all the way back to becoming a creationist, but he wrote the book that became kind of like the creationists' handbook to criticize evolution for a long time. So the human chimp similarity is a very powerful argument, meaning it doesn't have to be an atheist saying it. Some people instinctively will see that. They'll conclude it looks like we are part of a family tree. And so I'm just pointing out, it's not necessarily that they came to the table with an atheistic worldview like Michael Denton. In his case, it happened naturally. To his credit, after becoming an atheist and then studying evolutionary theory, he concluded it was a theory in crisis. And Michael Behe read that book, and that he said that was instrumental in him becoming an ID proponent. So he took it one step further. So what that tells me is one can understandably accept common descent, but it doesn't mean you accept all of evolutionary theory. The crisis in evolutionary theory is the crisis of mechanism. So even if we assume a progression, the things I've read, like for example, at the time of Denton, which is now almost 40 years ago, hard to believe, it was neo-Darwinism. And I was arguing with people who were just swearing that neo-Darwinism is just good enough, just need a few things to tidy it up. I read a recent paper in 2009 by Kunin saying neo-Darwinism is pretty much defunct, it's dead. And we're in a situation we don't have really a nice general mechanism. And there's going back and forth with the third way, where there's not really a third way. There's just a bunch of people that are disgruntled and no one pays attention. None of them have been able to kind of have dominance in there. Everyone has their pet theory. And Jerry Coyne saying these guys are cranks, and that's kind of the status. It's not over common descent. It's the mechanism. And so my thoughts are, that's why when I debate this, I said, I'm going to go right after mechanism first. It's the easy, low-hanging fruit. I could quote evolutionary biologists who are saying this is defunct. We don't have a general mechanism. We don't have this. We don't have that. And it's very easy to make a case there. When someone starts to see that, it'll be like Michael Behe, that they start to accept intelligent design. Once you accept intelligent design, and especially at the origin of life level, at that point, I'm happy that once they can accept that there's a creator, maybe the details, we can work on that later, like common ancestry. But, if we're able to prove the earth is young or the fossil record is young, you don't even need to fight the common ancestry battle. That would be just an afterthought.
Yeah, I think that you're making an interesting and important point here. And the thing is that even if Kunin and Dennis Noble and these guys bring up the epigenetic mechanisms and so forth, at the end of the day, they still will stretch the evolutionary explanation and just incorporating it in the new mechanisms and say it is still a non-intelligent, unguided mechanism. So you can stretch evolution ad infinitum, basically, and it will always remain the predominant explanation. It doesn't matter if we extend the mechanisms and incorporate epigenetic codes and signaling networks in the explanatory framework. So, in my understanding, the key issue here is, where do you reach the threshold where you have to say, this is too complex, there are too many things which have to be changed in order for you to go from one organism to a completely new organismal form, and where you get new limbs and eyes and ears and tongues and language and this and that. That is basically, in my view, the key question. Where is that threshold? And I think it is already, with the information at hand, it has already been exposed. The science papers, they have already given us the information which justifies for us to say evolution doesn't explain this. And I think a key issue here is that these information systems, they are integrated. And if you have just a small mutation, you need to change the entire system. And you can only change the entire system if you change everything. And non-guided events can't do that.
So there are areas that can be tolerated for mutations, but definitely there are some where, like in the enzyme that I study, you can knock out one amino acid and the protein's dead. Unfortunately, we can't generalize that to every amino acid position, but there are definitely some that are super critical and the thing is gone. Even at the nucleotide level, if you put a stop codon in the wrong spot, it's gone.
Well,
So,
what about the reaction center of the ribosome? There you have the RNA, I think 2493, which is precisely the one which you need to have the bonding mechanism of one amino acid with the other. It has, in the transferase center, it has to be exactly at the right place, the right amino acid, in order for you to have the reaction. And if you don't have it there, then you don't have amino acid bonding the way it has to be. That is a very good example. And you have the minimal size of the transferase center is almost 3,000 RNAs. So this is a huge structure. How do you get that by unguided means?
and it's, we'll say, see, this is where they keep saying it's argument by incredulity. I'm like, no, it's not. This is argument by contradiction. If someone said tornadoes can assemble 747s, I'll say, if I said, I don't know how that can happen, that sounds like an argument from incredulity. But the way to phrase it is, no, that's not expected to happen, because it's a disorganizing mechanism. And in prebiotic scenarios, you have a lot of disorganizing mechanisms that would resist the assembly of such coordination. This is unbelievably easy to demonstrate. Just take a ribosome outside of the cell and just throw it out there in a prebiotic soup. It's not going to get anywhere. You have to have so much there simultaneously. And so you ask the rhetorical question, what is the threshold? For some, at least I want them to be honest. Robert Shapiro, who actually endorsed this ID book, he disagreed with the conclusion, but he said it was good chemistry. But he said, some people will turn to religion. He said, I won't. I'll just take the remainder and go from there with little chance I have. And that's some people's attitude. Yes. Others, like Kunin, will invoke multiple universes, anything but a designer. It's like, okay, just be honest. And I had kind of a joke. I said, maybe the way to get a paper in is to say, look at all this impossible stuff. This is good evidence. Outside of a designer, we need multiple universes. That probably would pass peer review at this point. I mean, and I almost think, this is just a guess. I have to wonder at some point, if people start doing that, whether they're closet ID proponents just kind of making a little bit of, a joke, a little bit of a prank by invoking multiple multiple universes. Because, if I did that, you would know totally I was kidding. I mean, I could be honest and say, okay, outside of a designer, this is all you have. I mean, that would be an honest statement. Outside of a creator God, this is the alternative, but it's also not scientific because it's not testable, not observable, not provable, not verifiable, but it can pass peer review.
Yeah, today I had an exchange with Marcelo Barbieri. For who doesn't know him, he is one of the scientists in the forefront of biosemiotics. And I did send him my book, and then he replied to me and said that he simply doesn't agree with the conclusion. And I replied and said, well, this is what science is about. We disagree on things, but just disagreeing is one thing. But for you to providing a more case adequate explanation for the origin of the genetic code and genetic information, you have actually to provide the falsifier. Where is your data? Where is your evidence? And obviously they cannot give any alternative explanation because there isn't any. So at the end of the day, what we see is it is just personal preference. And it has nothing to do with the data or the evidence anymore.
Well, okay, so if I can wax theological here, both you and I are evangelical Christians. It says the kingdom of heaven is like treasure hidden in the field. I think sometimes God really does make it easy for people that want to close their eyes to close their eyes and walk away, because wide is the gate and easy is the way that leads to destruction. And that's really that's one of the most chilling verses in the Bible. And also says in 2 Thessalonians 2:11 through 12, he sends them a spirit of strong delusion so that they may be damned who love not the truth but have pleasure in unrighteousness. At some point, God's going to even make it. He's going to help them in the process. And I'm like, the only reason I engage certain people like that is because it's good batting practice. Their arguments are worth engaging, not them personally, because a lot of them may have already sold their souls to the devil. They're on their way, and God's helping them. So, at some point you're fighting against what God has already ordained, and there could be an interpretation of a passage, I believe, in Samuel where it says, the sons of Eli did not listen to their father because God ordained that they're going to be destroyed, which is really chilling. And, if people don't like that interpretation the way, I'm suggesting it, just look at 2 Thessalonians 2:11 through 12. And so there are days I get very frustrated. I said, God, you could settle this. All you have to do is put fire in the sky and thunder your voice and everyone hears it. They'll listen. And God has chosen to let the kingdom of heaven be like a hidden treasure, not something that is blatantly obvious to everyone. Those who wish to find it are given the privilege of finding it. And those who want to close their eyes, he's going to make it really easy. So, that's kind of my feeling. Oh, see, Mark O'Connell, like he did with Pharaoh after Pharaoh hardened his own heart. I think after the fourth time, God chose to harden it himself. Yeah. So, that.
Let me quote you here a response which I got today from a very well-known origin of life researcher, which has published several books, and he is professor at the ETH in Zurich in Switzerland. And he replied me this today. I did send him my book, and I'll read it here. Thank you for your letter and your question, which is a question that is 2,000 years old and perhaps more, which then refers to the question, who made the intelligent creator? In my opinion, there is no scientific answer to these questions, where scientific means an explanation based on experimental and verifiable data. If you want to have an answer anyway, this is based on faith, understood as a surrender of conscience to the non-rational. or better, to the non-rationalizable. And faith is not something that you learn from books. There is or there isn't, capable of answering. It is still a mystery, and perhaps it will be forever. That is, believing in the mysteries that surround us. Many, rather than believe in the mysteries, speak of God. It is undoubtedly a way to reconcile the completely human need to always have a satisfactory answer, at least for a certain stretch of life. Greetings and best wishes. So, what is interesting?
That was polite. That was polite. I'll give him credit for that.
Yeah, but you see what?
Polite. I'm glad he treated you well. I just wanted to
Yeah.
say.
Now, what is interesting here, Sal, is that this is a guy which has written books on the origin of life, which has a very deep insight in regards of the problems, but he doesn't come to the conclusion that intelligence is necessary.
Well,
He prefers ignorance and say, I don't know, rather than conclude information requires intelligence to instantiate it, which to us is very obvious, but it seems to them it is not.
Well, I don't. I've come to the point where I'm not going to try to.
I cannot hear you.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, now I can hear you again. I wasn't able to hear you.
I'm sorry. I've come to the point I'm not going to try to psychoanalyze. I'm going to be, I'm interested in this primarily because, there's some of these people some Christians are very eager to be on the evangelical trail. They want good arguments. I'm not actually that way. I was eager to delve into this for my own benefit because I was curious and I wanted reassurance that I was generally right. And it was just natural that when I discovered something, I wanted to share it.
So before I forget that, Sal, what is in your understanding today the best evidence that the Earth and the universe are young?
The geomagnetic field is now my favorite argument. Cowling's theorem, when Russell Humphreys was here, he went over Cowling's theorem. Cowling's theorem delved into electromagnetic theory. That's why I've been focusing on electromagnetic theory the last 2 months. I was invited to enter a PhD program that fell through. I would be studying photonics and electromagnetic theory now. But I said, I don't have to be in a PhD program to be studying that. I can just pick up a book. And so I started studying it because I wanted to understand this whole thing about Cowling's theorem. And when I talked to Russell Humphreys and I looked at the proofs, I looked at Wikipedia, and this is very interesting. Wikipedia says the magnetic field, at the rate it's decaying, is going to be gone in 1600 years. And I asked Russell Humphreys, I said, I saw in your paper the figure 1600 years. He said, well, that's one R over L time constant. And I said, okay, so that means you multiply that, if you use standard electrical engineering, you multiply that by 5. So that would be 7,500 years or so. And he made a compelling argument because I am, one of my degrees is in electrical engineering. So I have some feel. It's very hard to have a circulating current that lasts very long. How that can be achieved. And I was asking him some compelling questions how this could be done. So that's number one. The next is the faint young sun paradox. The next after that would be for the fossil record, the fossil record, the chemical dates. But only recently, Hugh Ross, who's an old Earth creationist, gave a very interesting argument. I was at the church service October 9th where he preached here in nearby Burke, Virginia. Oh, greetings, Wesley. Long time, brother. God bless you. He said it's amazing we have the magnetic field we have because the atmosphere and water would be gone because the solar radiation, it was very intense at one point, and it would have blown off all of the, it would have hit our Earth, caused the atmosphere and the water to reach escape velocity slowly. I mean, it would sputter it away over time and it'd be gone. But we had a magnetic field that saved it. And he was describing it as an Earth-Moon system. And I said, I sooner believe in miracles than a young Earth, as he described it. But I still respected him because he helped my Christian faith 21 years ago. So even though he's an old Earth creationist, I came back to the Christian faith because of his fine-tuning arguments, and also one of the staff members arguing against evolution. His staff member was named Richard Dean, or staff volunteer. Anyway, he then said, the sun has only been at about the radiation coming out of it has only been about correct in the last 100,000 years, making possible the emergence of human life. And I was just like, you're an old Earth creationist. And he gave this graph. He said, look, it's just perfect right where we are. At this time in our history, even if you assume billions of years, we're just at the right time. We came at the right time. He said the radiation levels would be too high for us if intelligent life had arrived. And I was like, that was really, I said, even an old Earther sees that we're in a very, very special time. One could just...
Does it have something to do with the young sun, faint young sun paradox?
Faint young sun plus the geomagnetic field. And he's an astrophysicist, so I know that he understands stellar processes, etc. So that could be made into a young Earth argument. But this whole thing about the geomagnetic field dying, even Wikipedia acknowledges it. Of course, they'll say, well, it was stable 7,000 years ago. And I just laugh. I said, that's the circuit, and they'll quote that. But I'll say that's the problem with that's circular reasoning. You're assuming that, see, we actually had good measurements. We started to measure this like accurately, like in the last 100 or so years. We have ways of measuring the strength of a magnetic field. They did not, no one was around 7,000 years ago with that sort of precision and record keeping. They really didn't understand, they didn't even have the right units or anything. So, I would say that's my favorite. The next would be Faint Young Sun. Next is the chemical dates in the fossil record. If we can solve some of the problems with radiometric dating, which I think we're getting very close to, I was doing stuff on heavy electron quasiparticles as an answer for how the nuclei can be changed. So that's my opinion. And I think I also read the book Solar System Evolution, which is written by a secular guy, National Academy of Sciences in the United States. And what was funny is that after I read it, I actually became a creationist. I said, I don't think the solar system emerged from a nebula. This book was intended to persuade me otherwise. After reading it, I'm just like, because so many pages it said, this is a hard, difficult problem to resolve. It does, I'm just like, it is hard and difficult because it didn't evolve. And you're trying to...
Yeah, I have put in the side chat here a link to my collection of evidence for a young Earth. And one of the evidences which I'm mentioning here is the magnetic field has been decaying for as long as we have been measuring it. Using uniformitarian assumptions back millions of years ago, the Earth's field would have been so strong as to melt it.
Yes, that was the conclusion by Barnes. And they keep saying, do you have a testable prediction? I said, yeah, the magnetic field, maybe not in our lifetime, but civilization, if it's around 10,000 years from now, if it goes to zero, like Wikipedia says, you'll know. You'll know that it wasn't around very long. But the other thing is we're seeing it also decay in other planets in the solar system. One thing that Russell Humphreys pointed out, and as I was looking at Cowling's theorem, no one really knows how the geomagnetic field is generated. No one knows. They're making all these assumptions and saying it's been around. they don't even know the mechanism of how this is possible. None of their simulations can explain it.
I have another quote here that I have been unable to find any documented instance of fossil trees, blah, blah. It was like to the recent force. Then only 10,000 years ago, the Earth's magnetic field was 128 times as strong as it is today. And that the Earth's magnetic field is decaying is well documented.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And Ray was pointing out our sun is well behaved. It's unique in the universe. We don't have, there's no star that is as stable as our sun. And I didn't know that because
Okay,
Carl's saying it's just an ordinary sun, nondescript, and we're a pale blue dot. It's like, no, the sun is very, very, very special.
Yeah, here the Earth's magnetic field. The Earth's magnetic field is decaying at the rate of about 5% every 100 years. This means that about 1,450 years ago, it was twice as strong as it is today, and 2,900 years ago, it was 4 times as strong. Therefore, assuming that the rate of decay has been constant for the recent past, then only 10,000 years ago, the Earth's magnetic field was 128 times as strong as it is today. So strong that the amount of heat produced would have prevented life as we know it from existing on Earth. At the very least, this data suggests that life on Earth is not much older than about 10,000 years.
Yep. So they say, where's your testable prediction? That's why I like that one. Is in principle, it's testable. And they, of course, they'll say, well, of course, you'll cite something that's outside of our lifetime. I said, well, you believe in evolutionary theory, you'll never be able to test it. So what's the deal? I'm giving you something that civilization can test. You can't test out these evolutionary theories very well. It could be falsified. I said genetic entropy is very well accepted in the mainstream kind of quietly for the human genome. So, you know, that's what I have to say. Oh, that's the other thing. I think the genetic entropy argument, not for a young Earth, but young life, I think it's compelling for the simple fact that most mutations are detrimental. And if you're having 100 mutations per individual per generation, it can't be purged out of the genome. Maybe we didn't, I wouldn't put a clock on it like some creationists would, including my boss. But I would say it would, at the very least, it would mean we didn't evolve from a simpler life form. Because if the normal mode of evolution is degrading, just based on first principles, the normal mode of evolution for complex systems is to degrade, not to construct, to destroy rather than construct, then we didn't evolve. And I don't think there's any way we could have been around for millions and millions of years. And in fact, a geneticist by the name of Kondrashov said, he asked the rhetorical question, why aren't we dead 100 times over? So the problem is obvious. And it wasn't even that good of the way he framed it wasn't that good because he used the evolutionary definition of fitness. If you use the functional definition of fitness, there's no way he could get out of it.
Well, the question is, if you have cyanobacteria, which supposedly are 3.5 billion years old, how is it that they have populated all different ecosystems, the oceans, even the desert, basically all the ecosystems that other life forms have populated as well? And while other life forms exposed to the same ecological pressures have supposedly evolved, and cyanobacteria have remained exactly the same over that time period. How can you explain that? And if you take the mutation rate of cyanobacteria, they would have changed their entire genome over 6,000 times. So
And there are problems that I saw today in my journal reading that dealt with alleles in diploid species. It's really, I need to have a conversation with Emery. He said he'll be free next week. I mean, there are problems that people are beginning to think about. I mean, people, meaning evolutionary biologists. I'm just like, dudes, you've had decades to be thinking about this. And it's only now you're realizing it's a problem. And if you've been working this day in and day out, you should have seen this as a significant problem, and it's not in your models. That's terrible. And now they're like, I don't know what to do with this. So I just put up here on my I have another screen here. It says Intelligent Design Academy. That's your channel, one of your channels. I'm going to put it in the video description. So if you see me typing, I'm going to do that now. And so if you have something on your heart while I do this, I have to modify.
No, I think that the thing about the electromagnetic field is something which has been completely out of my radar. So you bringing that back to my attention is actually something which I think is very good, and I maybe will investigate this a little bit deeper.
I'll tell you why it got on my radar, if you'll permit me. I was in the debate with PhD Tony. And I was trying to pay attention to what he responded to. He made some flimsy counterpoint to my faint young son paradox. It was pathetic, but he was just, not interested in truth. He was just interested in bulldozing people.
Oh yeah, I know him.
That really condescending, nasty attitude, but he was smart. I kind of let him get away with it. And he disregarded the chemical dates. Like, dude, okay, you're not here about truth. You're just going to bulldoze.
Oh, yeah.
He didn't even touch geomagnetism. I put it on the table. Not a word of response. I try to notice what they avoid talking about. I noticed that. And I said, that's the thing that's going to hurt him. He's going to be troubled by that. And the more I looked at it, it's like, as I read the literature, even in the Wikipedia article, it says no one knows what causes our geomagnetic field. So how can you be making these predictions that's going to be around, and yet we have all these measurements? Every direct measurement shows that pretty much a monotonic decline, and yet you're going to say it's going to recover? On what basis? You don't even know what the mechanism is. And they'll say, well, because it's been around for millions of years, and we have data from millions of years ago. And of course, I just laughed. I said, that's circular reasoning, guys.
Yeah. The thing is, they will find always excuses to say, well, maybe it was the rate of decline was less in the past. And they will always find excuses to just ignore the data. I mean, this is what they always do. I know PhD Tony from J.L. Warren's channel, and I had some he wanted to debate me on the age of the Earth, and I declined because I saw no reason to do so. Yeah, and I actually brought that up with the faint young son paradox in the side chat once with him, and he just hand waved it away.
Yeah, he hands waved. I'm just like, you ought to be looking at the anomalies. And I told him, I said, geocentrism had made predictions too. It didn't make it right. What undid it, its undoing, was the anomalies. And so he can cite all this concordance and whatever and on radiometric dates. And I'm just like, yeah, you could also cherry pick. What about all the ones that don't work? And then now you have this other contrary data. And so I said, you're not going to bulldoze me with that. And he was just really obnoxious. And he promised he'd write me back on something. He never did. And so I moved on to geomagnetism, and I'm just like, yeah, that's the one he didn't want to deal with. And I'm just like, okay, so you really don't know. But it is a testable prediction. Even in my own lifetime, the geomagnetic fields declined 3.6%. That's a lot in just one lifetime. I mean, in a few lifetimes, it's at this rate, it's going to be gone. I mean, maybe the only question is how fast. Is it going to be 1,600 years, or is it going to be 10,000? So,
but Paul, let me ask you something, and I want that you are honest and clear about this. Are you satisfied with the Jason Lyle's explanation of the starlight problem? Because I've not been convinced by what he proposed.
My assessment is it's terrible, and so there is a very, very senior young Earth creationist who's an expert in general relativity named Philip Dennis. He was a consultant for NASA in general relativity. I saw some of his peer-reviewed papers in the top physics journal in the world, which is the American Physical Society's The Physical Review Letters. He's top tier. And both he and I agreed Lyle was dead wrong. And the fact that he backed me tells me that I'm right, because I also studied general relativity. And I started to ask some of Lyle's people, fan club, what do you think about this or that? And they couldn't answer. They made mistaken answers. But the thing that Philip Dennis gave me, okay, there are two things. I actually, here on my academic channel, I've been covering about the way to measure the one-way speed of light. I was building an interferometer, reconstructing one that was pioneered by a professor in Australia. Now, this may not look like much. This is a very expensive laser here, by the way. And we're trying to measure, it turns out the Michelson-Morley experiment that had air in it, if you have a refractive index, it may actually measure the ether. And I actually made a show today why I believe in the ether. And I actually went through all the math and stuff. And for anyone who missed it, I went through this derivation over the last 6 weeks, where I start with the electromagnetic wave equation from Maxwell's equations. I do the second order derivatives and do a transformation of coordinates. You actually can demonstrate special relativity by that. And by the end, I was showing arguments why Lorentz's version of special relativity, which has a lot of the same results as Einstein, is correct. And Lorentz was an advocate of the ether. Ironically, today, when a student in college studies special relativity, he encounters what's known as the Lorentz factor. 1 over the square root of 1 minus v squared over c squared. That's the Lorentz factor. It's like, why is it not called the Einstein factor? Wasn't, the guy who figured out time dilation and all that, wasn't that Einstein? It was Lorentz. And that was an ether-based, I found it was an ether-based relativity. And I made an argument today that it makes more sense for an ether-based absolute reference frame relativity. You get the same results, and I would say it's actually better conceived. So back to Jason Lyle. So this interferometer that I was building, it was meant to be able to measure the one-way speed of a preferred direction of light, one-way speed. So if you can get the speed of light going faster in one direction versus another, as the Earth is spinning and also orbiting the sun, you should get variations. Michelson-Morley didn't get it in their vacuum interferometers. Their first interferometer that had air as a media had a slight effect. And when you work through the equations, it detects it. So what we've done, some people have done, is use even stronger materials with stronger refractive indices than air. So things like glass or whatever, the effect may be detectable. And so it may have already been measured, certain one-way speeds of light. But what really did it is Philip Dennis showed me this femtosecond camera. It's out in California, femtosecond. So these guys can fire a laser pulse, and you can actually see the laser pulse, that the head of the laser pulse go through like a bottle of water. And you could see it move. And you can really almost like say, let's put a stopwatch to this. How long does it take to go from one end of the bottle to the other in one direction? You can even, and that means you could also do it the other way. You can measure the one-way speed of light. And Philip Dennis said, I could do all the math, but look at that experiment and Jason Lyle is wrong and he's misleading creationists, it's going to embarrass us. And I'm sorry to be so strong about that, but I keep hearing this. There is a problem of measuring the one-way speed of light, if what they call in a Milne universe, where there's no matter. But if you have matter, you can measure this one-way speed of light. In a universe where there's no matter, you can't. So there is one situation you can't measure the one-way speed of light, and that's a specialized case that only exists in our imagination. And so that's what I think. I think we could have a much more exciting answer. We just have to keep looking. So thanks for asking.
Okay.
Well,
So we are almost we are almost 2 hours talking. So I'm getting tired. So I would like to
wrap up.
While it is very, very interesting to have the conversation, I'm suggest that we wrap it up, and maybe you can have a follow-up another day.
Yes. So I put your Intelligent Design Academy link. Do you have a link to the God Talk? And
Yes.
I'll put it in the video description before we close up. That way I don't forget. And all right, so I'm going to put this in the video description. While I'm doing that, would you like to give some final closing thoughts, and then we'll wrap up the stream?
Yeah, just want to thank you for the opportunity for having me on your channel to talk a little bit about my book. I very much appreciate it, and I hope that those which eventually come to buy the book, I really depend on reviews. There are so far 3 reviews on the book, and there was an atheist which I suspect didn't even read the book. He made a negative review. And if you have just 3 reviews, obviously this is not helpful. But it is expected, of course, because we are in a spiritual battle. So if anyone reading the book and is being edificated, so if you can actually give a review, an objective review on the book, I appreciate it.
Oh, yes. Again, thank you for helping me out several weeks ago when I was looking for over a month now, looking for a debate partner, tag team partner. Thank you. You bailed me out. You alleviated a lot of stress for that. And thank you for joining so many of my shows in the past. And so I'm just I'm gonna put in my usual closing end credits, so you can just leave the studio and take and turn in. You don't have to hang around. We'll meet again, Lord willing. And thank you for your time, and the Lord richly bless you. Take care, and everybody. God bless you. It's been a delight hanging out with you. I may have one more stream after this. It's been a stream heavy day. So anyway, take care. God bless you. God bless you, Angela. Angela, and thank you. Bye-bye.